That trailer.
What trailer, Thano?
The new dinosaurs are cool trailer.
Dinosaurs are cool. Jurassic World Rebirth.
The critics keep telling us dinosaurs aren't cool, but we're sticking by our guns.
Fuck those people, man. Dinosaurs are cool. They will
Yeah,
always be cool.
exactly.
Hell yeah, brother. All right. Welcome everybody to a new episode of Movies We Wreck, presented by the Cine Scoots Movie Show.
Yes, Rex We Love is here.
Rex, we love is
And
here. We're a
then
little behind. We are not quite at our 6 weeks deadline, but fuck it. We
here's the
fall.
thing, Javi. We have
We're
jobs.
busy men.
We have jobs.
We have jobs.
Yes.
I don't know what to say, man. We got jobs. We got things to do. I'm trying to need a microphone this week. Let's see how that goes.
There's wrestling to watch.
There's wrestling to watch. Sana watches first Royal Rumble.
There are political rallies to hold at your house while your dad gets shingles.
Yeah. Before we get going, what were your thoughts on your first Royal Rumble?
Oh, I totally get the whole thing. I get it.
Yeah. Hell
I can't call myself a wrestling fan yet, although I did order something in the mail, and it'll surprisingly take a little while to get
Fascinating.
here, but I did order something in the mail.
That's kind of amazing to hear.
I'm so excited to show you. Right between February 13th and the 24th.
That's a big window.
That's ludicrous.
That is crazy. Did you say February or March?
February. And then something I just ordered today is arriving between February 21st and March 4th. What is what's happening with Papa Jeff?
Hey man, listen.
What happened to all my shit that arrives tomorrow?
I don't know. But anyway, we are here.
Yeah.
Not to discuss wrestling, which wrestling is cool.
No, kind of the opposite.
Yeah. Yep. This is what happens when people don't have wrestling friends.
This could be one of the things that happened.
Yeah. You know what, guys? Watch wrestling and you can prevent tragedies.
Yeah. Now, so typically I am. Fuck your spoiler warning.
Yeah, I mean, listen. This is a movie that's 3 years old.
Yes, but I will say, if you haven't seen Mass 2021, starring Jason Isaacs, really, 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 if you don't know what the movie is about going into it, it's a much better viewing experience.
So here's my question for you. So you were like, "Oh, I hope you watch this movie not knowing the plot, right? Or not? Yeah. It would be better if you went into this movie not knowing the twist. Well, not even the twist though, because like it's in the synopsis.
Yes, but who reads?
But even if you go to like AMC right now and you type in like a movie, right? It'll give you a synopsis when you're buying your ticket.
Yeah, what a shame.
So like they kind of expect you to go into this knowing.
Yeah, I would say it is better not knowing. But that being said, it's been 3 years.
Yeah. That being said.
Yeah.
I wanted to check something really quick. Is your microphone the microphone I gave you? Yeah, it is. That's Zhang Xiao. Okay, cool. Anyway. So it's a movie, 2021, directed by Frank Kranz. How familiar are you with him?
Not at all, besides this.
Fascinating. Okay, so this guy, have you seen Cabin in the Woods?
Maybe. I can't remember.
I can't remember if you and I watched this together way back when in high school.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's a double date. I can't remember if we watched this one.
Because doesn't the movie Mama also take place in a cabin with Nicolas Coster-Waldau?
Yes, but that is not the movie.
I've seen that shit for sure.
Yes, but anyway, he plays like the stoner in that movie.
The director?
What? Yeah, the director of this movie. He's like a stoner in the movie. He's like very goofy. He was in the show called Dollhouse. That I love the show Dollhouse.
Do you really?
Yeah, it's a really good show. It's basically. Have you seen Black Orphan?
No.
Or Orphan Black. Sorry. Very similar premise. Shut the fuck up. But anyway. So, like, as far as I've seen him, I know he's like, he can probably do multiple things, but I primarily know him as like a very funny guy.
Mm-hmm.
So then being like, hey, by the way, this movie's being made by this guy. I'm
Yeah.
like, Jesus, I
Yeah.
guess.
It's got like 10% funny, I would say. Maybe 5% funny.
Oh,
But it's not.
there was something that happened in this movie that made me fucking laugh.
Yeah.
Uh, we'll talk a little bit about it because I got my notes.
Yeah.
But man, I'm not saying this movie makes me want to drink,
Wow.
but this movie kind of made me want to drink.
Oh, poor Javi.
It made me want to have a long drink. Not sponsored.
You know how
Uh,
I know? You know how I know that there's something wrong in there? It's
what?
because you watched either this movie or Terrifier, or Lord of the Rings, excuse me, and you're like, now I need a Terrifier palate cleanse.
Dude, all right, hear me out. There's a huge difference between watching a movie that's like purposely trying to get a reaction from you,
Yeah,
which is what I feel the Terrifier movies do,
and something that's just straight up
and
sad.
something that's just like this shit is actively happening right now.
Yeah,
Like this could very well be a conversation happening between two families in 2025.
yeah.
And that's the depressing part of it. It's a very very well acted movie.
Hmm.
Everybody here shows up to play. Everybody does their part. Um, Obviously, I'm a little biased towards and out because of our Lord and Savior Hereditary.
H will represent
Hell
on
yeah,
the
brother.
pod.
Uh,
Yeah,
but like Jason Isaacs,
came to play.
holy shit, dude, that performance
Yeah,
was amazing. And like I think because of who his character is, like he wears a lot of his emotions like right on the sleeve.
yes,
And I feel like you need to be able to do that performance without coming across as like over the top, which I think could be very easy to do.
hmm,
Like just a dad who's angry and yelly, right? But in this movie, like yes, he is angry and yelly, but
but
the
he's more than that.
entire time is like you feel that that's coming from a place of like absolute pain.
Yeah, the acting really does the heavy lifting in this movie, right?
Yeah,
Because I mean,
that's
you
all.
know, it's
That's really all it's got going on. It's all pure acting. There's no.
yeah, it's a sparse setting. It's a sparse list of characters, right? And I like that each of these four throughout the movie, like, because it's two sets of parents, each of these four has a point where like they are justified, and then each of these four has a point where like another parent says something to them, and they're like, ah, I never thought of it that way,
Yeah.
right?
So without getting into the full on spoiler, like this movie is just basically these two families went through a traumatic experience. Uh,
Which let me protest this synopsis real quick.
the one that
All right, I'm going to read it as it should be written. You ready?
as it should be written.
As it should be written.
So
Let me
is this
run
the
some.
Thano gives us the fun synopsis type of thing?
Listen. All right. Sorry. Do you have the Google Doc pulled
I
up?
do have the Google Doc. The Google Doc
Okay.
is the synopsis from somewhere. Oh, from like Rotten Tomatoes or something like that.
Yeah. All right. Here we go. This is what the synopsis should be. Years after a horrible tragedy turned their lives upside down, two couples sit down to have a painful and heart wrenching conversation about grief and loss.
Yeah,
That's it.
that really is what it should be. I do wonder. The name I think gives a lot away with that synopsis. Like with this
Mm.
synopsis, if you sit down and you read this and then you see the name, you go, ah, I think I know what it is.
But it's such a well crafted title
It is.
because it's a shooting and it's also religious and it's also heavy, right?
Yeah.
It's got
So
the triple
so
entendre.
now that you read the proper what should be the synopsis, let's go ahead and read the actual synopsis.
Yes. Uh, Years after a horrible tragedy turning their lives upside down, two couples, one the parents of a victim of a school shooting, and the other parents of the perpetrator, sit down to have a painful and heart wrenching conversation about grief and loss.
Yeah. So right off the bat, I do think given given the subject matter, I
Yeah.
do feel like this is one of those like, oh shit, maybe we need to give people kind of a heads up.
Yeah, that's the thing. Because I thought about how I would recommend this movie. Ironically, I feel like this is a movie that a high school class, like a mature high school class, would actually get a lot out of.
Mm-hmm.
And it could also have the potential of being very scary and triggering. Like, and I thought about ways where I'd be like, how would I tell a group of kids to watch this movie? And I'd be like, all right, if you feel like traumatic events can get to you, or if you feel like you can be quite affected by very serious, sad subject matter, I'm going to ask you to go read the synopsis
Go to
first.
the library.
If you don't, then dive on in, please.
Yeah, and so like, all right, so I was talking to my coworkers about this movie because I was like, oh, I'm gonna be watching this movie, and
Mm-hmm.
man, it's a bummer. And one of my coworkers, she's very young. She goes, "Why would you want to watch that?"
Oh, because it's so good,
And I'm
man.
like, "It's so good. It's very good, but it's also
Yeah.
like it's a story that like it does happen. Like and I it's not you and I have had this conversation, right? Like I
Mm-hmm.
watch movies to a lot of the times get away from like the dumb shit that is actively happening in our very stupid lives,
Mm-hmm.
right? And this is one of those movies that while I do really appreciate, I do like it. I think it's very well acted, crafted, and everything.
Mm-hmm.
It's not in my immediate wheelhouse because my immediate wheelhouse is not to watch something this fucking sad.
You're not going to have this in the background while you're doing homework.
Absolutely not.
Um,
Yeah.
it is. So it's interesting. So you had made a comment earlier on about how like one of the things that's so sad about this is that this could be a real conversation that could be happening. Oh, there's a
It's
kitty.
Ash. He's a baby.
There's a kitty.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I I actually think that it makes me glad that this is a conversation that could be happening.
Mm-hmm.
Not not because that means that there was a school shooting, but like I like to believe that people can come together and not necessarily like solve their problems, but like they can navigate the very, very, very difficult process of
Yeah.
healing. I think that's what I love about this movie the most.
Yeah, so I feel like as far as like getting into this movie, because the plot is honestly two families are having a chat and they're kind of coming to terms with the events. Um,
Which can we talk about? Can we quickly talk about what happens before that though?
yes,
Because I would say I think you do need some setup.
yes,
But on this most recent watch, as I was like, because this meeting happens at a church, and it's like a very like it's kind of a very typical like bluish state Episcopalian group of people who are like at this church
I
hosting.
yeah, I feel like this is like if someone had been like, "Oh, this is what Katie's church looks like," I'd be like, "Yeah, that tracks."
Yes, this is the Protestant church like in your neighborhood that has the pride flag, right? It's this kind of like
Yeah,
it's this kind of church.
yeah,
As I was watching it, I was like, I appreciate this is here, but I also like upon this rewatch, I don't know what to fully do with this scene, other than just like watch them navigate the awkwardness of what they're about to do. But I'm like, I wonder how many different ways this beginning could be told to us.
yeah. I did wonder if there was more than obviously like I don't know how religious the director and the writer is, right?
Yeah,
But I do wonder if a lot of this has to do with their interpretation of like what religion can do to someone's healing.
yeah,
Because
I
it
don't
doesn't
know.
really focus on that. This movie is
It's
very
not over.
much
Doesn't beat you over the head with it. They're
exactly.
honestly like they're talking about how like the choir is practicing and they need to move
Hmm.
and like there's some boxes they need to clear out and they're like should we offer coffee like
Which
is this
is
table okay.
again, those were like some of the laughs that I had, and
Yeah,
I remember watching this movie. And I think I wrote it on my notes. I was like, this woman thinks she's the main character of this movie.
yeah,
The white
yeah,
lady, she's like making things
yeah,
almost like about herself,
yeah.
like trying to make everything feel hunky dory. And the lady who's like helping mediate this meeting is like, lady, listen, we
Which
just
as a
want a
side
fucking
note,
space.
let me just say as a side note, if you're ever hosting an event you should always be able to provide a basic snack. Like my wife had a wonderful event at the library. yesterday, where they brought this woman who studied like slave spiritual songs, right? And she taught the people at the library about them. And the event was fully booked, 38 people, but they didn't have not one little thing to eat. I'm like, that all you need to get is like 3 packs of Oreos, some napkins,
Mm-hmm.
make a pot of coffee, and that's it.
Yeah.
Long story short, there should always be snacks.
They should just follow the AA model of just have like some white cups and some coffee, some creamer and some sugar,
Yeah,
and maybe a cookie. Call it a day.
always, always be, always be offering snacks.
Uh,
ABOS.
yeah. So all right, so they're setting up this meeting because they're gonna have the two families come in, um, and I don't know how long on your first watch it took you to be like, all right. Especially, did you know going into this movie originally, like the primary premise of like the shooting?
No, no.
Okay,
I caught it early-ish.
okay. It doesn't
Yeah,
dwell on it. I feel like they do make it within like the first 15 minutes. I think you know.
yeah,
Um, but for me, going into this movie, knowing what the actual tragedy that took place is, I actually spent my time figuring out, okay, is this the family of the shooter or is this the family of the victim? So that
yeah.
was
Who's
that was
who?
almost like a fun kind of fun quote unquote.
Fun.
But it's like it's something that I was then trying to figure out because I'm assuming on your first watch you're like, what the fuck happened? What is the tragedy, right?
Yeah,
So for me, I was like, oh, this is like me trying to piece things together. Who is who? Um,
yeah.
and man, dude,
I do love the
like,
way how it is. I do love the way how it is revealed.
yeah,
I think it's from Jason Isaac's wife, and she doesn't like shout it out, but like they're like, "Why do you need to know this?" And she's like, "Because your son
your
killed my
son killed
son."
my
And
son,
I was
and
like,
yeah, it's very matter of fact.
"Yeah,
And by the way, so not long after like I found out, or I kind of pieced it together. Oh, like the first family is the victim's family.
yeah,
Then I see Ann Dowd show up with a fucking plant, and I'm like, oh no, not this lady showing up with a plant. Why? Why would you show up with a plant? I don't know. It's such a touch that I'm just like, is this going to set anything that they say? Both,
yeah,
God, what are their names? Because Jay and Gail, oh, Richard and Linda. Anytime Richard or Linda say something, you're just like on pins and needles because you're like, what is going to set Jay and Gail off?
yeah,
Because yes, I'm not saying that it's not a tragedy what Richard and Linda go through. Like whether you like it or not, like they lose a son, and
yeah,
then you have that already, weighing you down. But then you have the additional tonnage over that of like, well, it was your son that did this to everybody else.
yeah, yeah,
So like this movie really does do a good job, I think, at kind of balancing these feelings a bit. Which honestly, kudos, because like going into this, I was like, how the fuck are they going to make me sympathize with the family of the shooter
yeah,
to like a degree that is somewhat even equitable to like with the victim's family? Because
right,
like as far as like what we see on the news, all we ever really see is like the families of the victims, like how their lives are fucking. I mean, fucking Sandy Hook is like a prime example, right? Like the shit these families deal with on top of already losing their kid. Um,
yeah,
but then you rarely ever hear anything from like the parents of like the perpetrators, right?
yeah,
At most, sometimes you have like the bullshit answer of like, "Oh, we never saw this coming," and it
yeah,
kind of predispositions you to kind of almost be on guard with these parents.
yes,
And I do think that this really does a good job at like kind of giving you both sides without excusing their shortcomings. Like Jay is very rightfully able to point at a lot of things. Like, how the fuck did you
yep,
not see these red flags?
yeah.
Um, and
Which they then say like
uh,
they do say like, yeah, we saw them,
yeah,
right? Yeah,
uh,
and you'll never believe that your kid is capable of
of this,
with
Yeah.
that. But they were like, yeah, he's broke, no good.
um, which it it's really hard from again because you're on your guard with these people, and it does take a while for you to drop that guard. I think especially with Richard, I think Linda does a bit of a better job at kind of putting down those walls immediately.
So I have a question for
Yeah,
you. I don't know. I never researched to see if this is confirmed. Are they separated?
I think so.
I think so
I
too.
think so, and
Yeah.
I think that that kind of tracks.
And that shows how they're both handling. That shows that they're handling this grief in a different way.
Yeah, I mean
Yeah.
Jay and Gail, they're together. They
Yeah.
clearly love each other. Richard and Linda do even from when they're like they talk to each other. They're very kind of cold. I do think it
Yeah.
almost implies towards the end that having this conversation does heal something between Richard and Linda.
Yeah.
The fact that they walk off together, like they're willing to like have a conversation about what kind of transpired,
Yeah.
does help a lot of them. Um, but it Richard does not do himself a lot of service for like half of this movie.
No, I'd say if like this is so I'm gonna preface this by saying that this might be one of my like top 2 or 3 favorite movies of all time. Which is going to be funny because I feel like frequently during this recording I just like want to make off color crass jokes about it. But
It's
like,
how I
I feel
mean
like
how listen, man.
yeah, you
You
got to deal
watch
with it.
this and you're like,
Yeah,
if we just start talking about this so matter of fact, I might cry.
this is a movie that I mean this is a movie to like appreciate in the way it's intended. You got to let it sort of sit and ruminate in your heart. When you're bringing it in dialogue, you gotta deflate that with some
Oh,
humor,
1,000%.
especially with two straight men. But I feel like if I was going to vote like one of them off the island, like
Oh, it's fucking Richard in the heartbeat, dude.
it's got to be Richard. But like I do give him credit for when Jay. This is jumping ahead a little bit, but when Jay was like, "You do not know," and then he gives that beautiful monologue that he gives. But then Richard's like, "Oh, like I,
That
like I know." He's
that
like, "I know every
scene,
step." Yeah.
I think that's when it really hit me.
Well, yes, because I think that's the scene where that's the one scene where we get a shot outside the room at what I assume to be like a little leftover memorial flag on like a wire fence
So
somewhere.
yeah, I was gonna ask about that because there's that shot we see like 3 times during the movie.
Yeah.
Um,
At the end.
we see it somewhat early. We see it when I think right before Jay goes off in his big monologue, and
Yeah.
then we see it like right after that, and then
Yeah.
we see it again at the end. I
Yeah.
believe we see it 4 times,
Yeah.
and I think it's like isn't it like the field for the high school?
I took it as the field of the high school, and then on whatever the fence, I took it as that the little colored flag that's there is a leftover ribbon memorial from whenever this shooting transpired. That's how I
Gotcha.
took it. That's how I took it.
Okay, I wasn't sure because I mean, this was my first time watching it. I just remember watching the movie like, oh, holy shit,
Yeah.
this like out of nowhere.
Yeah.
um, but yeah, that scene I think is like right before that. Um, Jay is kind of like talking to them, and they're like, well, they're kind of like being very blasé about everything. And Jay says, "We agreed we didn't want litigation, but that doesn't mean we don't want to see you in pain." And
Yeah.
yeah, dude, like,
Yeah.
yeah, you're kind of watching. You're like, yeah, dude, get him, Jay, get him.
Yeah. So here's the thing. My wife, this movie makes her angry.
it, yeah,
And but it makes her angry when she's like, I don't like that they forgive each other. I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, no, I would hate them. And I'm like, but you should forgive. She's like, no, like I would hate someone who did that to me. And I think that that's like I think that just points to like a value difference that she and I will obviously have to like navigate in our marriage. But then also
this is
like
a
I
thought
think
that we'll remember that popping up in the top corner in the in the Fallout game.
Yeah, yeah. But then also, I feel like that's kind of what this movie. It's the energy this movie's pointing at, where you're like, no, like I want to hate this person. Like I want to hate this person.
So I wanted to say this for later because I did want to touch on that
Yeah.
because this movie does kind of jump that rope a bit, right? Like, should you forgive, and what role does forgiveness play in the healing?
Mm,
And I mean that really is like the crux of this movie, right? Like that, I think that is the primary point of this movie. How
yeah.
do you move past this? How do you move past a situation that is 1000% fucked,
Yeah.
right? Like, this is, aside from like a freak accident happening, or maybe one family member doing this to another family member, I think this is probably worst case scenario in a family setting, right?
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
Especially in such a senseless act. Like, it wasn't even like this was one on one. Like, Hayden came up to, wasn't it Evan? Is that the other boy?
I think so.
Like him coming up and just straight up just shooting him, and it was a one on one beef, right? This is
Yeah.
very much
He was a mass
it's a
shooter.
mass
Like it
shooter.
was.
It was a number. Unfortunately, it's a statistic, and that does something to like the family members. and
Yeah.
and so then, to what degree should you let that anger fester, and then how much will forgiving the parents actually do for your sanity? and
Yeah.
and I know, I get it. It's a very ideal, way of seeing the world, to be like, I will forgive them and this will make me feel better. But I'm not saying I agree with Roe, but I
Yeah.
1000% understand the no. I don't know that I could forgive someone for doing this to me.
Well, then this is where you get into the questions of like what is forgiveness actually,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because so depending, and this is where the setting of the movie comes into play, depending on how much you're willing to let the Christianity color this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Like you are commanded to forgive, right? 70 times 7, which basically means like a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but if you look in the stories where that takes place, forgiveness isn't necessarily an erasure of what happened. Like, there's still consequences. There's still taint.
Yeah, it's a moving
Um,
past.
it's kind of just like you're agreeing to like begin the healing process while even knowing that you're probably not even going to finish the healing process.
Yeah.
You're agreeing to like turn this ship around, right? So yeah, it's a hard thing, and I love that, like, because you'll see it on the news where like someone will commit a murder and they'll be in court, and then the victim, and the victim's family will give their speech, and they'll be like, "And I forgive you," and
Mm-hmm.
then like I think people read those as like kind of a very simple like tying the bow on things,
Mm-hmm.
but I like that the movie has progressed these characters to a very far way, but then the bow is definitely not neat and tied.
Yeah.
Um,
I do think
so,
this movie really does, like, as cliche and corny as it might sound, like, it really does kind of take you through like the steps of grief,
yep,
where like necessarily, like, the forgiveness is not necessarily like I forgive the act. It's the acceptance bit of it. Like,
yeah,
it happened. It really really fucking sucks.
yeah.
But this anger and resentment is not going to make that go away. And it's just, if anything, is like that removing of the weight a bit, kind of for both families.
I think
Um,
especially from Jay and Gail's perspective, it's for them. It's remembering that like, oh, these are actual people here going through their own thing,
yeah,
right? And
and
that
and that's
that doesn't undercut our thing, but
yeah.
like, there's
It's
there's a huge,
it's very
yeah,
interesting to me, the idea of, so the parents have this like thought experiment, not the parents, but like the whoever's moderating has this like thought experiment of like sharing a memory,
hmm
right? And I can't remember quite what Evan's memory is because it's not. I'm not gonna say it's not important. It is important, but it's not as
Yeah,
impactful as Linda's memory, right?
yeah,
Because like it's what you're left with the movie, um, where the whole movie, like, she doesn't really want to share a memory of him.
yeah,
Um, but at the end of the movie, she says like, "My memory is he came up to me and he was like, 'I'm gonna beat the shit out of you.'"
yeah,
And she was like, "I should have told him to like do it because then I would know what my son is actually capable of."
yeah.
Um, so like they really do a lot. They really do a lot to humanize. Feels like the wrong word.
But the stories make these two characters come to life. Like these characters that we don't see are like almost like resurrected from these stories.
Yeah, I think what the better way for me to say this would be like this movie kind of really shines a spotlight, kind of like you said, on the side that we never see of this
Hmm.
conflict. Right, this conflict, as much as it sucks to say, is never going away. At
Yeah,
least not anytime soon for us in our society.
yeah,
um, but we will, for as long as it continues to happen, we will see tons of Jays and Gales, right?
yeah,
As much as it sucks, but we never hear of the Richards and Lindas of the world.
yeah.
They
Very rare.
kind of fade into the background, and it's easy to hold that resentment over those types of people, right? The
Didn't
parents
the
of the perpetrators. Uh,
didn't the Columbine mom do like a controversial TED talk?
I don't. I have
I think
no
so.
idea.
Yeah,
It doesn't also. It also doesn't help that a lot of the times, like when a shooter does something, sometimes they take one of the parents out with them too.
yeah.
Right? Wasn't that the Sandy Hook one where
You know
the
what?
guy?
This is this is even cliche now. I can't keep them.
It,
I can't keep them straight.
yeah. Um, so I do think it's also nice that we do
Yeah,
get this side from Richard and Linda.
yeah,
Having him, like you brought this up, when Jay is going on and on about like, no, my son was not just a number. Like he was targeted, right? Like he
yeah,
shot him, he left, he came back to finish him off,
yeah,
and Richard then shares his whole thing, how he knows like the exact order of the events, time of death for like certain kids, like how it happened, and like it shows like, yeah, they are dealing with
hmm
their own thing. And one of the things that's really, really also kind of adding to the sympathy that you feel for them when he talks about how they are not even allowed to grieve their son, not because they don't love him, but because like it's just not an option for them really.
yeah.
Right? Like, yeah, he did something awful, and he, people can rightfully say he can burn in hell,
Right.
but like they couldn't even have like a proper, they said, right, like a proper funeral.
Yeah.
Everything
No
had to
one.
be undisclosed. Family, friends absolutely don't want to go to this thing,
Yep.
right? So family wouldn't probably want to go and see this happen. So like they are dealing with an entire different side of a coin that we just never
Yeah,
acknowledge.
they had to go. They had to go through it alone.
Yeah, and in a way that's, I'm not trying to say it's equally as bad, but it's a different kind of bad that the other side doesn't experience. Right, the other side has that community behind them, has that togetherness, like
Yeah.
they have a connection with the other victims' families that you can kind of like form bonds with. What are these guys gonna do? Call the parents of the other shooters and be like, "Hey, man, listen, can you come to the kid's funeral?"
Here's the meeting.
Right?
I'll, I'll bring pizza.
Right?
Um, yeah, I think this is where I think this type of thing is where like conversation this type of movie kind of shows the limits about where viewing everything through a lens of equality has because I guess like we acknowledge that like one couple's experience is not equal to like another's, but it's almost not even helpful to like even try to think about them as equal or greater or lesser. They're just
They're two
two
very different
different things
things.
that came at a crossroads.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's kind of what like I don't know, it's kind of like what grief is. Like on the one point we want to keep people's problems in perspective, but like you can only compare two people's grief so much. Like
Yeah,
even if it's expected or unexpected, right? Grief is just grief in the sads or just grief in the
grief in
sads.
the sats, man. And
Yeah.
again, as much as I'm not one to like seek out movies that purposefully make me bummed out,
Yeah.
like every once in a while, like when I do watch one and it does actually hit, it it feels good to be like is this what I should seek out? Like, do I want to seek out this cinema, or do I want to stay in my little slasher bubble where everything's hunky dory and things
Well, it's
don't
funny.
hurt my chest?
These kind of movies kind of just happen on you. Like this is like I don't think I don't think you even should be seeking this kind of movie out. I think this is the movie that's best given through you through a surprise or recommendation.
Yeah,
I will say in terms of the bummer. So you know how I always so Linda, right? Linda Zandau,
yeah,
yeah. Um, After she tells her story, right, and it's after the big meeting, the story that you and I talked about with the beat the shit out of you.
yeah.
She's like hugging Gail or like holding her she's like holding her she's holding her shirt, her blouse, and then she's doing like the laugh cry, and she's like, mine's a different kind of story. and then, and
Yeah,
then I was like, and that's why I can't say this movie bummed me out because I'm like, all right, she found in a terrifying story, right, and like an awful terrifying story, like she managed to find some sort of silver lining just in the fact that it was a different, a very different kind of story.
something. But
Yeah,
I mean, I think it's the same kind of thing that we brought up, where we're like, you kind of need to diffuse. You need to diffuse like such a heavy moment with something,
yeah,
because otherwise, what is she gonna do? Walk home with that
yeah,
statement be the last thing you say? Like,
yeah.
it's something for sure. And
Mhm.
I think it's almost a little bit because they have all this. So as the movie progresses, like you see the escalation of like their arguments, like getting more and more aggressive towards each other.
Mhm.
Where it finally reaches the peak where they're not even sitting at the little table,
Yeah, they
right? They
moved or
move
something.
to the
Yeah,
corner of the room where it's comfortable, right? You
right.
have two comfortable chairs in the corner. Usually, you consider like sitting in the corner of your living room to be like a very comfy spot, right?
Yeah,
Like a safe space almost, and that just kind of starts to show, at least to me, kind of like this progression where they're like, okay, I think we need to like kind of start putting this, not necessarily put it behind you, but
yeah,
coming to terms with this. Like this is about as good as it's gonna get,
yep,
right? I do believe in my heart of hearts that there's no way these families are gonna be like, hey, let's go to a cookout.
yeah. And I don't need them to.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I don't need
and
them
I don't
to.
think this movie implies that either,
Yeah,
which is good. Like a lesser movie, this movie does have the ending of like, and they resolved some problem, but it doesn't go the full mile where it's like unrealistically saying, well, no, they're friends and they're going to be like, hey, want to have a cookout next weekend? No. Um,
yeah. It's not Remember the Titans, which
yeah,
which I do still love, but
yeah,
but it's far the cheesier movie.
yeah, for sure.
Um,
Um,
yeah,
but I had a really good time with this. I find it surprising just how like I remember when the awards came out in 2022. I think was the year that this would have been potentially nominated if it were.
yeah,
Um,
because this came out in 21.
21. But there was like crickets.
I found out about this from Chris Stuckman's Best of 2021. This was his number one, but I had
Really,
no, yeah, I had zero knowledge of it before that.
I don't remember what 2021 movies came out.
Yeah,
Like anything else worthwhile in 2021? Was that
well,
the
it
Eternals?
was a COVID year.
Oh, the Green Knight. Gross.
The Green Knight.
Yeah, that movie fucking sucked, dude. The Green Knight.
Yeah, the
Yeah, I
Z.
mean, 2021 was a year where like it was a lot of the remnants left over from like the pandemic. So I
Yeah,
could see this being absolutely in someone's top. Like there really is not a lot of other stuff that came out. The Black
yeah,
Phone came out 2021.
great movie.
Great movie. Yeah. Um,
Honestly, I would report on that shit again. Oh, we did an episode on. Did we?
we did
Yeah,
do
we
an
did.
episode on it, and the
That was
sequel's
what
coming out this
I-
summer.
Amazing.
Amazing. Um, any final thoughts that you have on this movie before we? Because honestly, this movie
I,
is not one that I think the conversation that we had is the conversation that is to be had about this, right?
I want to watch it in like a bigger group setting or in like a more
Thano wants to
formal
bum
structure.
everybody out.
There's
Thano wants people to cry. Thano wants people to feel
literature's
bad.
all about sad stories. The students ask me, why is every story we read so sad? I'm like, the best art is sad. God damn it!
The bet. We can agree to disagree on
For the
some.
books, for the books, for the books, the best art is sad.
Is there is a lot. There is a lot of sad.
The sad books are pretty good. The sad poems are pretty
Even books that are not necessarily quote unquote sad books really do a lot of the times have like a very hard hitting sad scene at least.
good.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, this is one of those things. Like I remember like thinking anytime we watch any of these movies like that it's not in the theater. I always think to myself, like, do I want to make Katie watch this with me? And this was one of those movies that I was like, objectively, absolutely fucking not.
Yeah, I don't think. I don't think.
Did you
I don't
make
think.
Ro rewatch this for this viewing, or has she just seen it in the past?
She had seen part of it in the past. She thought it was boring. She was in the room while I was watching it here, and then I did kind of make her watch, but we weren't like actively watching together.
Okay,
But yes,
very good.
but yes, I'll make anybody watch this movie.
I will say though, as polarizing as the topic itself is, not the movie
Yeah.
itself. The movie was very well received.
Oh, does not handle it in a polarizing way. I will say, like none of like the hot button issues concerning mass shootings ever like fully dominate this movie.
Yeah,
Like it's not just a gun control movie. It's not just a mental health movie.
yeah,
It's
and
not.
and that's kind of
Yeah,
what I meant too about like Richard not helping himself out because he
yeah,
makes some comments that I'm like, did you just like we need more mental health? Try to
yeah,
argue me here?
yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
crazy. Um, as far as like the movie, it's like as a whole goes, I would classify this as definitely a recommendation.
Yep.
I would recommend this to a lot of people, but I can't quite say that I would recommend this to every.
No, I mean, I could definitely see some people who would not be able to handle this movie, and I think that's fair.
Yeah. As far as like critically, it really does kind of bum me out. Like this movie made jack shit money.
Yeah.
I think it was like a pandemic problem specifically. I know it came out in 2021, but do we know exactly when it came out in 2021?
Let's see.
Because
Do release dates even count in that year?
the what?
Do release dates even count in that year?
I don't know. I mean, I
January 30th, 2021.
oof,
So, I mean, really, COVID.
this is peak.
Sundance is when it premiered. Yeah.
This is
Sun
basically
premiered at
2020.
Sundance. And then October 8th, 2021, United States.
No, but still
Um,
October though. October by that point.
yeah, by that point, were you back in person by that point in school?
Oh yeah,
Yeah, you were back
yeah.
in
We
person.
were way back by then. I don't even think this movie ever got like a wide release, which I mean I kind of understand.
No, but I didn't. Yeah, after watching it, I would not be expected if it got a wide release.
Yeah,
Um,
I think with the way movies are lately, I think if this had come out this year or last year,
more buzz.
I think it could have made its way to like a wide release.
Yeah.
Um, but as far as like going forward, I'm not opposed to more movies like this. He's still hard at work directing movies, Fran.
Yeah, I
So
need to check out his other film on his other body of work.
yeah,
Man, what a haircut he has.
what a haircut! What?
What is this? A Nickelodeon music video from 2004?
I mean, this is the only thing he's directed. He acts a lot, but this is the only thing he's directed and written. So we'll see. Maybe he was like, "Fuck, my really good movie made no money. I'm not getting jobs anymore."
Hey man, Edgar Allan Poe died penniless too. Just saying.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining us on the Thano Bums the Shit Out of Javier.
Yeah.
Our next movies we wreck. This is where we get into our heavy hitters.
Hard mode.
This is the hard mode. I'm gonna be very honest. Yeah. I still gotta watch Return of the King. I'm pumping.
I still gotta see Terrifier 3.
I'm pumping myself up to sit through fucking almost 5 hours.
Yeah,
that's 4.5 hours, isn't it?
It's not short.
Oh, Thano. We are gonna have words.
You need a rainy Saturday. That's when those movies are meant to be watched.
We're gonna have some chat about the equality of what I'm putting you through and what you're putting me through. Because I think
don't even.
I think it's very fair. Thano's like, oh, Javier's making me watch some gruesome, awful, nasty shit.
No. I like to know what's going on.
But Thano's psyche.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, friendo. We are.
Oh, yes. It's about to be filmed. And I've got some thoughts.
It's a double feature. Double feature. The double feature will come out actually before. My plan is to have the double feature tomorrow, and then keep with our normal Wednesday schedules for movies we wreck. So thank you so much, everybody. Go watch this movie, bum someone out, recommend it to someone else. Make them suffer in a good way. This movie hurts so good. Catharsis. Yeah.
Catharsis the movie.
All right, everybody. Until next time, he has been Thano.
He has been Javier.
This has been Movies We Wreck by the Cinescoots. Bye.
Bye.